Hey, this is Vlad, and in today's video, we're going to talk about read-through. What is read-through, how to calculate it, what's a good read-through rate, and what you can do to improve it and to actually sell more books. Read-through rate is what happens after a reader picks up your book, and this affects how much money you can make. Imagine you sell 100 copies of one book, and then 60% of those people move on to buy a second book. That would be a 60% sell-through rate or read-through rate. Is it even important for authors to know their read-through rate? I've been working with dozens of authors, and I can tell you that authors that make a lot of money have high read-through rates, and authors that struggle to make money have low read-through rates. So in case you're struggling to make money, it could be because you have a low read-through rate. So let's go ahead and see how do we actually calculate this. Now, luckily for you, I'm not going to actually make you do any math. Now it's quite simple. We don't have to pull in information from Amazon and put it into a Google spreadsheets and then divide things. We're not going to have to do any of that. You can if you want, but currently it's not necessary. There's softwares that do this automatically with just like signing up to a software, and they just calculate this thing. So let's jump over to my computer and I'm going to take you through, what you need to do. Okay, so what you want to do is go to kdpchamp.com. This is probably the most accurate dashboard or software for authors. What we want to do is just sign up. I mean, you would sign up. It's a free trial, so this is absolutely free. You're going to sign up and they will ask you to submit your cookies, right? So once you do that, then you should have everything here on green. Once that's done, and it should take you no more than 3 minutes, then what we want to do, we want to go to book statistics, and then we want to head over to book series stats, right? So this is where we want to go. And then what we want to do is, first of all, select the series that we want. So I'm just going to select the series here. And then I'm going to click search database. And now it's going to show me all the read-through numbers, basically, sell-through and read-through. And we're going to go over them one by one. What we want is to set this to lifetime, because this is the most accurate. Sometimes it can change. If it's on the last 30 days or last 60 days, it can change, but usually on all time, that's when you get your most accurate sales through or read through data. So what I want you to know is there's 3 types of read through or sell through, right? And that's 3, not 2. I know most people are aware of there's 2, but I'm going to talk about the third one in a bit. So the first one is sell through, right? And what this is basically people that buy your books. So if you're in Kindle Unlimited, you have people that read your books and that buy your books. So what this is basically we're just looking at the number of people that buy a book 1, and then the number of people that buy book 2. So here we can see that the sell-through number is 52. So the formula for this is you're taking the book 2 sales, you're dividing that by book 1 sales, and you're multiplying by 100. And that's how you get your percentage, which is 52. And you would do the same for the sell-through from book 2 to book 3. You would take book 3 sales, divide that by book 2 sales, and then multiply by 100, and you're going to get your number. Then we have the read-through, right? So this is the KU pages, the page reads. This is people that read your books with Kindle Unlimited. And the way you calculate the page reads, you basically divide book 2 page reads, total reads or full reads, it doesn't really matter. You divide this by book 1 total reads and then multiply by 100, and then you're going to get your read through, right? So what are the numbers that you want to see here, right? From book 1 to book 2, book 3 to book 4, what are the numbers that are healthy and that are good? So on books that are priced the same, especially from book 1 to book 2, you're looking at a 50% or 60% ideally sell-through. And then from book 2 to book 3, you want to be around 80%, 70, 80%. And then from then on, you want to move over to 90%. So from book 4 to 5, 90, from book 6 to 7, 90, right? Like everything is 90. And then what you want in page reads, this needs to be higher. So you want 70% or over around 70% from book 1 to book 2. And then from book 2 to book 3, it should be over 90% across the board. So everything from there, it should be over 90%. So here, again, 50% from book 1 to book 2, 70, and then you want it to go over 90. And now the third way to calculate read-through is actually to look at the revenue that's moving from one book to the other. And the reason why I like this is because it takes into account both of those previous numbers, both ebook sales and both page reads. And when you have different pricing, for example, a series has 99 cents to $2.99, then the sell-through there is gonna drop to 20% or even lower sometimes. And the thing that stays the same always, it doesn't matter how much you know, like how you change the pricing, is the revenue. So there's series that are priced from 99 cents to $2.99. However, still 60% of the revenue moves over. And in cases where you have $2.99 to $2.99 or $3.99 to $3.99, still 60% of the revenue moves over. That's just how it's gonna be. It's not gonna change. So it's just more simple for you. For you, you need to understand 60% of the revenue that was generated from book one needs to move over to book two. And the whole point of calculating those numbers and seeing them is to actually understand how much money you can make. That's the whole point of read-through. And the way to calculate that is quite simple. You just divide the book two revenue by book one revenue, multiply by 100, and then you're getting your read-through. Now, there's an easier way for you to actually estimate read-through on a series, and it could be even a competitor series or a different author series. You can determine the read-through by looking at the number of reviews that they have. So you will typically see that book one, it has a specific number of reviews. Typically, you will see that 60% of reviews move over to book two. And that means there's a 60% revenue that's being moved over. If the number of reviews is much smaller, that also means that the read-through is lower. And this is generally quite accurate. Now, let me give you an example that will probably shock you and will make you understand how important read-through actually is. So just to recap, the numbers that you want to see in a series are like this. 60% of the revenue needs to move over from book one to book two. 80% of the revenue that's generated on book two needs to move over to book three. And then from book three to book four, 90% of the revenue needs to move over. And then from book four to five and so on, all of it has to be at 90%. So let's just take a scenario. You have two series. The first series has a 60% read-through between book one and book two. And then the second series has a 20% read-through from book one to book two. And that's possible. I've seen series with such a low read-through. Now, if book one in both of those series is gonna generate $1,000, then that would mean that in the first scenario where you have 60% read-through, you have book two generating $600, and then in the second scenario, you're gonna have book two generating $200 because 20% of $1,000, basically that's $200. So let's just make a simulation here and see what happens to the revenues of the other books in the series based on this sell-through number from book one to book two. So let's take the first scenario. We have book one that generated $1,000, 60% read-through. Book two generated $600, 80% read-through from there on. Book two then generates $480, and then from book three to four, that's going to be a 90% read-through, which means that book four is going to generate $432. And now let's take the second series where book one generates still $1,000, 20% moves over, book two then generates $200, 80% then moves over, book three generates $160, and then 90% moves over, book four generates $144, right? So you can see that there's very obvious differences what happens in book two, book three, book four because of the low read-through from book one to book two. So now let's just compare those two scenarios and see how much revenue would then be generated at the end of those series. So let's just look at series one. So we have the total revenue for two books is $1,600. The total revenue for three books is $2,080. And the total revenue for four books is $2,512. So basically scenario one, because read-through is at 60% from book one to book two, the total amount that we're gonna generate if we generate $1,000 in book one, is gonna be $2,512. Now let's just look at the second scenario where we have a 20% read-through from book one to book two. So the total revenue of two books, book one and book two, is $1,200. The total revenue when three books is gonna be out is $1,360. And the total revenue with four books, it's gonna be $1,504. So there's a very big difference. We can clearly see that the total revenue of four books, it's $2,512 compared to $1,504. So there's $1,000 that are missing. So we can clearly see how read-through impacts the revenue. There's just like almost half of the money is just missing because there's low read-through on book one to book two. And by the way, the read-through from book one to book two, that's the most important and that's the one that can fluctuate the most. Usually once people are after book two, then Even if you have low read-through on book 1 to book 2, then they usually just keep on going the way I said, which is 80%, 90%. So what affects read-through? How we can control it and how we can improve it. So number one, you have back matter, right? This is one of the most important things. What happens at the end of the book? And what do we do there? What do we tell them to do? What are the actions that we want them to take? Now, the purpose of the back matter is just one. We want to sell the next book. That's all we want to do. And we do that by doing two things. First, you want to pitch your next book. So if you like this series, then go ahead, or like this book, go ahead and read the second book, and then you can pitch it and make it relevant to the current book that they read. And then the second thing is you want to get their email list, because if you get their email list, you're actually building a list of buying customers, of paying customers. And on the list, you essentially what you're gonna do is the same thing what you're doing in the back matter, which is selling the second book. Now, when it comes to the back matter, it's very important that you are simple and efficient. The less choices that you have, the more actions readers are gonna take. If you check the link in the description, I put a free template of the back matters that we actually use for our clients to get the numbers that you've seen. So the same 60, 80, 90%, that's the back matters that we use. And I made a simple template that you can just follow. It's proven. If you go with that, then it's very likely that it's gonna work for you as well. And it's absolutely free. Now, the second thing, and it's very important, is the quality of the books. If the books are not written well enough, people are just gonna drop in the middle of the book. They're not even gonna make it to the end. And obviously, they're not gonna continue to, for you to pitch them the next book. So obviously, quality is important. Now, let's assume that the quality of the book is there, like the writing is good and everything. What you need to do in order to sell more books is just to introduce basically the next book at the end of this book, right? And that usually helps a lot. Now, the other thing is cliffhangers. Some people hate them, or they say they hate them, but in reality, people love cliffhangers. And I can tell you this because all the books that we're basically selling, they do have cliffhangers, and I can easily see that they actually keep on reading, which means they're actually enjoying the books. Now, obviously in your books, you want to finish your book and then create another scene and then do a cliffhanger on that, but not do an actual cliffhanger on the whole thing. And that usually works well. Another thing that you want to pay attention to is you actually don't want to mention that the series contains a cliffhanger, because that can be a turn off and people will just not buy the books, right? And that will make it very hard for you to actually sell the books, right? So we stay away from that. We don't mention the cliffhangers. We just remove that, and that works very well for us. Now, does pricing affect read-through? And the answer is yes, it does. Especially, and I touched upon this earlier, when you have a book that's 99 cents and you sell it to $2.99, the sell-through there, just the sell-through, can be from 8% to 20%. So it can be very low. The reason why this is low on ebooks is because you're actually, targeting people that are paying less than $1, and then you're just selling them a 99 cents, and they're like, well, I'm not interested in that. I'm actually interested in buying 99 cents books. So it's not typically a very efficient way, like an efficient way of pricing. There's not many benefits to it. You might think it is, but it's not. It's just like probably helps the rank, whatever. But in the long term, you're not actually benefiting from selling your book at 99 cents and then selling it to $2.99. You want people that are willing to pay money for your books. That's the most ideal, and that way you're going to generate more money. Now, if you're in a genre that within that niche or that market, that's the pricing strategy that everyone's doing and that's what works, then I recommend that you stick to that. The thing that you want to pay attention to is if 60% of the revenue moves over from book 1 to book 2. It doesn't matter if your sell-through is low, like if the sell-through is low from 99 cents to $2.99. What's important is that 60% of the money moves over. Like, that's the most important thing. So if that's the case, then you don't necessarily want to change the pricing. But in case you don't have 60% of the revenue moving over, then you want to change your pricing from $2.99 to $2.99 or $3.99 to $3.99 and see how that goes. The nice thing about it, you can test it. There's no downside to it. You just test with it, let it run for a week, and then just see what happens. Do book launches affect read-through? And the answer is yes, it absolutely does. The more frequent you release, the higher the read-through is gonna be. And the lower or the less often you release, let's say they release every 4, 6, 7 months, then the lower the read-through is gonna be there as well. And let's say that you can't release very fast. What you can do is just make sure that you always have the pre-order ready. So by the time that they finish the book, you have a link that says pre-order the book. and that helps increase the read-through eventually. What I always recommend to all of the clients that we have, and we change our publishing schedules, is to rapid release at least the first 3 books. The reason why the first 3 books is because, as I said earlier, the most important metric is from book 1 to book 2, and then the second one is from book 2 to book 3. Right? So we want to make sure that we get as many people as possible over from book 1 to book 3, because we know after they're over to book 3, then they're going to read 90% of them, they're going to read the rest of the books. So at least try to rapid release or release as soon as possible the first 3 books, and then you can take your time with the other ones. But the minimum that I would recommend is just do the first 3 as soon as possible. Otherwise, you're risking the success of a series. Now, a question I've seen asked in a group is, why are KU reads, page reads, lower than the sell-through? Because that could be the case for some authors. And the reason why that is because the people that are actually paying for the book, they really like the premise. So they're interested in what you're selling and they're willing to pay. And the people that are in Kindle Unlimited, they have so much, options that they're just probably more interested in something else. So what it is those people from Kindle Unlimited, your book is not as appealing to them. That's just what it is, and that's just what it means. How do you solve this? Well, you don't. I don't think there's necessarily a way to solve it, but this is just what it means and why you have this. And it could be that what you write is not necessarily as appealing to the Kindle, the KU market. You're probably better off being a wide author. That could be the case. All right, so just to recap, now you should have an idea of why read-through is such crucial and how important it is on how much money you make as an author. What you want to see, the healthy read-through rate, is 60% of the revenue from book 1 needs to move over to book 2, 80% of the revenue from book 2 needs to move over to book 3, and then 90% of the revenue from book 3 needs to move over to book 4, and then the rest of the series needs to be 90%. It should all stay more or less the same. The ways to improve read-through are having a good, proven back matter, and there's a link to a free back matter template that we use for our clients. It's proven, it works. In case you have problems with your read-through, then you can definitely use those. Then you want to have obviously good quality books. You want to use cliffhangers where it's possible, and then also to introduce the characters from your current book to the next book. And then lastly, you want to use pricing. So if you have a problem in your sell-through, you want to adapt the pricing in order to make this 60% revenue to move over. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe. I'll be putting out more videos, and let me know what are the things that you struggle with when it comes to read through. Is there anything that you would like to know more? Let me know in the comments.